Today is day 4 of the November 94 7-day retreat in Springwater. That's sort of the number and name of it. Day 4 retreat, Springwater. But what does it really mean being here? Not just by the known date and place and name of myself. Name and what I know about myself. What I know I have been and what I wish I could become. What I'm afraid of, trembling about, and hoping for. Fear and hope and trembling and wanting, becoming can all have objects to themselves, wanting more peace, quietness, enlightenment, wanting to attain. We talked about that again yesterday. Fearing my whatever, inadequacy, badness, insufficiency, shyness, lack of love. Wanting to be a better person. Less afraid, more at ease. All of these objective aims, thoughts, ideas, hopes, for something, away from what? At this instant of a fan kicking in and humming quietly. What am I doing here? This is what a question that comes up so many times for so many people, at least once a retreat, maybe once a day, once in a sitting. What am I doing here? Why am I here and not someplace else where it's warm? Or more snow, so at least I could ski. Or the question, what am I supposed to be doing? This comes particularly when one has been trained in practice, one practice or another, and somewhat feels at a loss in this place with little structure. What to do, and what one would like to do seems so impossible, so unattainable. To be without conflict, at ease, at peace, at one. One person said to me after a talk in which we quoted the Buddha saying, I attain nothing from complete enlightenment. The person said, I argue with that he must have attained something. Must have been a different person at that moment. Something must have changed to say that. Yeah, realizing one is not a separate person. who is imagining being able to attain something for himself, herself. No one there in need of attainment, because everything is here. Undivided, not separate. So hearing that and having heard that plenty and read about it a lot, one wants that, one yearns for it. One has even been taught to yearn. You're not a good spiritual student unless you have a strong yearning. Remember when I started teaching at a center, people asked that in meeting time. How can I develop a stronger yearning? How can I have more faith? Because that was another requirement listed. And how can I have more doubt? That was the third requirement. Can you help me get more of that? See, actually, the whole matter is so simple. Not easy, but very, very, very simple. Just being here, openly in touch. Words are always little or grossly dualistic, but we can't help that. That's the matter. That's the way of language. Simply being here, openly in touch with what's happening. And not just what's happening on the gross level, which is plenty as we sit down. First 2-3 days, a lot of agitation, a lot of restlessness. The body, mind manifesting in more awareness than usual. It's drivenness. It's throbbing with doing, with anticipating, with needing, wanting, angering. And that comes into view, into feel. And already it's being wished away. I wish I wasn't feeling that way. It's judged as bad, as interfering, and as not helpful. Which creates the instant complication. Someone this morning came in, I'm so confused, I'm getting more confused all the time. And then just pausing right then and there and saying, what is confusion? Let's look at it as the fan starts humming. What is confusion? Person saying, I'm judging everything, and I understand I shouldn't be judging. That's the confusion. Judgment is happening, and then I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I still doing this after 3 or 4 days of being here and understanding clearly, intellectually, that it's no help to be here when there's judgment of judgment of judgment. And then the evaluation, I'm confused, which has definite impact on the organism. If I say I'm confused, then I feel confused. Meaning, well, we all know it. I don't have to work hard to go into what it feels to be confused. But does that make sense? That in some way or other, confusion always means I don't like what's happening right now. It ought to be different. It should be different by all accounts. I'm confused because it's like this and not like that. So, can the confusion or the being confused, the thought of being confused, flip into feeling and touching and investigating, if you will, what this is. Not mentally, analytically, but experientially. Quieting down with what's there. The turmoil, the upheaval, the restlessness, discomfort. Without knowing it, giving no further name to it, realizing that naming it adds to the input and the body responds to mental input, like the truest of servants. So what is simpler than just sitting down or getting up with what's there? Everything sitting down, everything sitting, everything getting up and walking. So much going on in this one organism that if we thought about it, we'd go crazy. Try to think about all of it simultaneously is impossible. And one thing after another would take the rest of our life. And yet it's happening, not just in this organism, but in all human organisms, in all sentient life, in all what we call inanimate life, in the life of the solar system and galaxies and space and black holes. All of this sits down and gets up and doesn't know what it all is. And yet, some spark of what we call awareness. Which doesn't aim to name everything, to know everything, but it's aware of being. In all simplicity, is that possible? Of course it's possible. It's happening right now. Sitting, sensing, breathing, crowing, cawing, snowing. Peopling, airing, darkening, lightening. The words come, but they don't disturb being here. Simple, unadorned, not needing to be anything or anyone. Because it's felt as separating and dividing and superfluous, extra. One may feel one came here for quietness, and yet all this inner turbulence revealing itself, or some of it at a time. So can it be listened to, felt, touched, allowed to be in quietness? The quietness of not trying to influence it, change it, meddle with it, get rid of it, promote it, keep on, hold on to it. And those habitual movements of the body-mind coming into awareness. Simple. See, we haven't mentioned questioning yet. Because that word can evoke something, some idea, which it is not really referring to. Ever since we can remember, we remember being asked things. And the expectation being there to provide an answer to the question. And when we were small and asking questions of our parents, elders, we also wanted an answer. Maybe we didn't want the answer exactly to the question. I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding about this, that children ask so many questions because they want to know so much. I've had experience that often children just want to keep up the contact. And asking questions of parents may bring attention easier than not asking questions. So one remains in communication, gets attention, interest, praise maybe for asking such intelligent questions, because that is reinforced strongly in school. Not so much asking intelligent questions. Many people tell me that teachers did not appreciate their intelligent questions. But needing to supply intelligent answers to questions asked by the teacher, or what is more customary these days on worksheets, workbooks, ask the questions on our computers. And provide a running stream of answers. The faster, the better. We are also graded on speed, not just on content of answer, but how quickly it comes. Very hard on some children who are slow, not less intelligent, whatever that means. There's a big debate going on about it right now. So we are used to the fact that question means answer, to produce it. Whether I'm sure about the answer or not, it's better to give an answer to the teacher than to leave a blank. Remember when our son came home in 4th grade with his first ever F, F meaning failed. And the problems, it was arithmetic, the problems he had given answers to were all correct, but there were 16 open slots where he hadn't gotten to. And 16 minus counts as an F. Talking to the teacher, she said, these kids have to get used to college at 4th grade. She had 2 daughters who had just entered college and were in the midst of this speed thing. On tests, the more questions, the better the grade. So, somebody now talks in a spacious room like this with lots of mats, people sitting on mats or chairs. What do we mean by questioning? A little brown tablet at the beginning of our private drive, it says, for meditative inquiry, at Center for Meditative Inquiry, or questioning is a similar word. What do we mean by it? And that again, our answer to it will depend on what training we come from. We may have trained in a place where repeating a question was the practice. Who am I? What is mu? What is love? Many different spiritual questions are used as a practice, and at least where I trained, the question was repeated on every exhalation. Maybe just the very tip end of the question, not to make it too cumbersome. So is this what we mean by questioning, repeating a question which may arise? And I myself raise the question already during an opening talk, usually. What am I? Aside from all the concepts and ideas. Or why did we come here? What are we looking for? What do we want? So, is that meant by questioning to take one of these questions which has a particular intimacy, appeal, and repeat it? Or does the question immediately trigger activity in the files of the brain to produce answers? It does that automatically, doesn't it, in the beginning? Often people tell me this. I sometimes don't like your questions because they start up all kinds of mental activity. To answer it, which is our conditioning. Actually, if a question does start up some mental activity, maybe one has gone through it a million times and wants not to go through it one more time, but maybe one has not gone through it. I remember early in my life when questions came, I thought and thought and thought, and then thought some more about it, and talked with my sister and corresponded with friends about these questions. It was a thrill. A real yearning and excitement, fun, to think about questions. Maybe look it up in books, what other people have said about it. There's nothing wrong with that. We're not judging it as wrong or right. It may help to find out firsthand about the limitations of thinking, trying to think out fundamental questions, or to come to an answer of a fundamental question through thought. One firsthand finds out the limitation of that. Acknowledging the fun one has had with it, and the good relationship with people who were like-minded, either in direct relationship or through books. So, coming back to what do we mean by questioning? What am I doing here? This was what came up several times yesterday. Why am I here? Why did I come here? To do what? So that question, if it's really gripping, not just a rhetorical exclamation of boredom or despair, not that that needn't be taken seriously and listened to with interest, but I don't mean that kind of a question, but really, what is going on right now? What am I doing? What am I? Why am I here? And can there be that kind of question unfolding which does not pressure for an answer, which does not even expect an answer, but is willing and ready and open to ask into the darkness of not knowing? Not having the answer, not expecting it, not knowing whether there even exists one, but the quietness of listening, being, in the light of a question that has been put, that is interesting to one and gripping. And with that quiet listening, not knowing, the energy generated by the interest in the question. That quietness, what is that? That quietness of not knowing. Realizing it's no use to go to the files. Can't provide. So this quietness of not knowing. In which everything becomes very audible, very perceivable, very transparent. What goes on in this body, mind, mentally, physically, emotionally. And also, none of that. The quietness of listening without expectation is none of that. Mental, psychological, emotional, physical. But it brings it to light, it brings it into realization, it makes it real. And then of course the judgments, the habitual habits, the habits of judging, of not wanting, can they also become transparent? I don't want this. This I want to keep. I wish it could last forever. And to hear that, those voices, if you will, quietly, in quiet stillness, which is none of that. See, there's a wealth to be discovered about ourselves, which is overlooked if we expect something spectacular to happen. Then the mind is focused on the spectacular, and the whole body is in the mode of expectation, at the same time setting itself up for disappointment, depression. We've all been through it or going through it. But to discover the little things, one person was mentioning it last night in a group meeting. Coming upon, but directly coming upon, a habitual mechanical pattern of one's life. Of being afraid, I don't remember what the thing was, being afraid of being wrong, wanting to please, afraid of being punished or judged. That pattern, coming upon it, not through thinking, not through analyzing, but directly, there it is. And as she was saying, the instant release of it. The freedom in that direct discovery. Someone else mentioning. The danger of mentioning these things is one may compare oneself and think, why doesn't this happen to me, and not even listen anymore. But it can also be helpful to clarify, because our question was, what am I doing here? What did I come for? Why this? So that's what someone mentioned, if I get it together correctly. I noticed, or it became clear, that wanting a thought-free mind, thoughts were mechanically, not intentionally, but mechanically pushed away. I never realized that, person said. I never was aware of that. That I indeed wanted that thoughtless state. And under the auspices, one could say, of this wanting a thought-free state, pushing away thoughts, not seeing them intelligently, but pushing them away and not realizing the whole process, not unaware of it. And again, as happens with anything that is directly discovered, there's a freeing and a change. One can look at these thoughts. It's all right. Not only one can, but why push them away? Why do anything mechanical? Darkly, unconsciously, habitually, addictively, when it can be seen, simple, clear. Because new questions arise. Why do I want a thoughtless state? What about that want? And that want coming into awareness. All the assumptions that go with it. All the assumptions about thoughts. And, as was mentioned, interesting to see what kind of thoughts move around and move this body-mind. Can be seen at a glance. It doesn't need further thinking about the thoughts, although that happens quite easily. If felt need to think further about the thoughts, that can happen awarely. It doesn't need to happen compulsively. I shouldn't think this way, I should. And a third comment comes to mind, someone mentioning first of all mentioning that I don't feel that I can question. Questioning is not what happens for me. I think I mentioned it yesterday. It's rather observing and learning as observation takes place. And in this observation, what was realized was finding oneself in a quite comfortable state. And then, out of nowhere, awareness of that. And with that, the realization was what one was holding on to this comfortable state. There was a holder on and a state to be held on to. It was not philosophized about it. It was the immediacy of seeing, which needs no subject-object division, no holding on. Things come and go, including our comforts and discomforts. And realizing one is subtly or unconsciously holding on to a state of comfort with all that goes with it, does not mean I ought to feel uncomfortable. One can interpret what is being said like that. That what is said is, don't ever feel comfortable here. I'm not saying that. It's a wonderful thing to feel comfortable. But it's a marvelous thing to realize if there's holding on in a subtle way. Because it opens up this whole being. So right now the question came up again. What am I doing here? Can there be listening and looking in touchness without knowing? We will end here for today.